In this, the 20th lesson in the course, A Critical History of Economic Theory and Policy, I present the views of several economists who have stepped forward to challenge mainstream economic theory during their careers. There have always been a small number of people in every scientific discipline who are troubled when conventional wisdom conflicts with their own observations and investigations. While the majority may seek acceptance through conformity, others risk the disdain of their contemporaries for running against the wind. In 1958, Mason Gaffney, teaching at the University of Missouri, was one of the first economics professors of his generation to observe that tax policies were pulling investment from the cities, setting the stage for decades of sprawl development. Gaffney wrote, "Urban land prices are uneconomically high. The scarcity of urban land is an artificial one, maintained by the holdout of vastly underestimated supplies in anticipation of vastly overestimated future demands. I think this uneconomical price level imposes a correspondingly uneconomical growth pattern on expanding cities. High land prices discourage building on vacant lands best suited for new development and divert resources to building highways, utility networks, and whole new complexes of urban amenities so as to provide and serve substitute urban lands further out, substitutes for something that is already in long supply." And in Gaffney's opinion, once land prices start to crash, the wrong option is to try to use public policies or funds to prevent them from reaching whatever bottom the market requires in order to make investment in capital goods production once again profitable. He writes, "And so it would seem wise for policymakers to set about lowering asking prices for urban land. But here they meet a dilemma. What stimulates building is not falling prices, but the end result of the fall, low prices. Policymakers are tempted to put off the day of reckoning, to tolerate and, in fact, actively support high land prices. But the irony of such policies is that they stimulate development of still more substitute urban lands and set the stage for more drastic ultimate collapse. There seems one obvious escape from this dilemma, as it must be done, do it quickly, bring land prices down fast, and get it over with." Gaffney was one of just a small group of economic professors whose attentions were focused on the operation of land markets specifically. Another was Colin Clark. Colin Clark was born in London in 1905. He earned a degree in chemistry at Brasenose College, Oxford in 1928. From there, he became a research assistant at the London School of Economics. While visiting Australia, he was offered and accepted a position with the government of Queensland. His major writing, the book Conditions of Economic Progress, was published in 1950. He spent a year or more teaching at the University of Chicago and then Oxford University. By 1969, he was back in Australia at Monash University and later the University of Queensland. In 1965, Clark added his voice to the few who encouraged governments to look to land values as an important source of revenue. He wrote, "Anyone, whether wage worker, salaried worker, manager, or proprietor, who is taxed at a rate which he thinks too high, may work less energetically, or take more leisure, or possibly emigrate. A piece of land can do none of these things. On the contrary, its owner is likely to administer it with more skill and care and put it to the best possible use, if he has to pay a substantial tax on it anyway. And unlike savings, land is not the fruit of past human effort." Clark's observation is extremely important. Low rates of taxation on the value of land allow landowners to hold land idle for years or decades. At minimum, what the taxation of land values does as the tax approaches the full annual location rental value is require owners to consider bringing the land to its highest best use or selling the land to someone who will. After more than a half century of neglect, our concern over the environment, the destruction of animal habitat, the escalating number of species becoming extinct, and sprawling development absorbing some of the best agricultural land, there is now some attention by economists to land markets. The messages of the individuals highlighted above and the work of many others is finally finding an interested and receptive audience. An analysis of land markets still has not found its way back into the majority of economic texts. Scientific investigation demands that the characteristics of land be accurately analyzed if economics is to fully deliver on its promise. An important exception is the basic text in economics as written over many editions by Paul Samuelson. As far back as the 1958 edition of his textbook, Economics and Introductory Analysis, he wrote this. Now, it is one of the peculiarities of land that, unlike most things, its total supply is relatively fixed by nature and cannot be augmented in response to a higher price for it, and its total cannot be diminished in response to lower land rentals. Sites with good locations earn rents in the same sense that fertile areas do. Many people began to wonder why lucky landowners should be permitted to receive these so-called unearned land increments. At least some people continued to wonder in 1958 why this was permitted. The study of political economy, as presented in the writings of Henry George and others highlighted above, have caused many more people to wonder why this has been permitted to continue for such a long period of time. Where land markets are concerned, the bottom line is that the game is rigged. There can be only a few winners and always many losers. To whom does the rent of land belong? That is the fundamental question. In the game of Monopoly, there's only ever one winner. With a few changes, the game of Monopoly could provide a clearer picture of the game played in the real world. High taxes on wages, on commerce, and on all buildings in the town paid for the public amenities that drove up the value of land you inherited years ago and have sat on. Collect a huge annual rental payment by leasing your land to someone who produces goods or provides services. Or sell a land at a price based on capitalization of the future increased rental value and retire in luxury. Well, that's how the real game of Monopoly is played. And in our world, 7 billion people, the landless poor, are prevented from even playing the game. They are at the mercy of land-owning elites. And that concludes the 20th lesson.